Welcome to the AI Ireland podcast, your window into the world of AI innovation on the island of Ireland. Join us as we explore how AI is harnessed to tackle both business and societal challenges, revealing the cutting-edge solutions emerging from this vibrant AI community. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates and insights in the world of AI. Hello, welcome to the AI Ireland podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kelly. We are very happy to welcome Rena Maycock, CEO of Chirp, formerly known as Culture, to the podcast today. Rena is just back from the AI Awards, which was yesterday, as we were handing out the award on Best Application of AI and Ethical Studies. Rena, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you very much for having me. Delighted to be here.
What's it like winning all these awards? Because every time I see you win awards, obviously yesterday was a big one. Like, it must be a strange feeling. It
is a strange feeling because we started this almost 7 years ago. It took us a good 5 years to get funding. So when you're pre-funding and you're around town, and Ireland is very small, Dublin smaller, you were around town talking about your dream, talking about your concept, which was Culture, now Chirp. You've got a bit of a prototype, you've got an amazing team, and you've got a fantastic market, but you've got a deep tech product that's AI driven and it's going to cost 4 million to get to market. It can be a bit soul destroying. So to get out this other side, since we got our funding through, we got our 2.8 million euro grant from the Disruptive Technology Innovation Fund. And then we got our private raise of 1.67 million, all from angels. And once we got all of that in and started the project, the development runway of the 2 years, and that was in May 23. Since then, the awards are coming at breakneck speed, which is fantastic. Probably would have preferred them drip fed over the last set of years, but no, it is phenomenal. And look, it goes a long way towards independent validation of the solution. And that's brilliant for investors who have, spent their hard-earned, tax-paid on cash investing in us. It's great for stakeholders in child protection and cybersecurity that have backed us. It's extra validation and it's fantastic. And for the team, it's just brilliant. For quite a while, it's been a bit of the arena show because everybody was unpaid and working around full-time jobs. But now that we are making these advancements from the technology and we can sit at the AI Awards and do these fantastic demos on the device, and we can show people, now we can detect nudity and stop a child from sending that first nude image of themselves. Now that we can do all that, it's great to get these awards because, we go back to the team in DCU Alpha and we say, look what your work is doing. So it's a real recognition of all the work that they're doing as well.
Yeah. I think it must have been 4 or 5 years ago when we first met. But if you were to look online now, you'd be thinking overnight success, right? That would how it'd be, the perception would be. And that's so interesting how you talk about people, full-time jobs, working around discretionary effort, that golden thread of showing the value, and then the powerful element of, here's a demo. This is what we could do, because words are one thing, but demo is like, I get you.
Yeah.
There was a couple of things that kind of came to mind. When you're bringing out this product, what was the kind of the driver that enabled you to go, actually, I'm going to continue with this, that you felt like, okay, there's a moment where people are getting it, this is worth going on the journey? Was there a moment, or is it just a few different moments?
In retrospect, when I look back, our timing was bad. 2018, when we were granted our patent for our operating system modification, the likes of the Digital Services Act, the LSHE bill, they were in train. People were talking about them, but there was no big news about them. VLOPs or social media companies weren't really feeling under that much threat. The awareness around online harms wasn't really at tipping point the way it is now. You really can't read a newspaper these days without seeing a story about a child who has been systematically cyberbullied, groomed, sextorted from, and pushed into the irreversible. So back in 2018, we were too early, arguably, and then we were close to getting funding. COVID got in the way. And then once COVID ended, actually what happened in July 2021, Ylva Johansson, the European Commissioner, she launched an online safety was an emergency bill. So as part of that, they had a derogation from the privacy directive, for example, and that was to tackle the sharp increase in online child abuse material, child sexual abuse material, which we call CSAM. And that was a direct result of, within 3 months of lockdowns, that was a direct result of children spending much more time online unsupervised. And at that point, it started to explode. There was extreme pressure on regulators to deal with this issue. There were things like UNICEF coming out and kind of saying, look, privacy is one thing and children have a right to privacy, but they also have a right to be protected when they go online. So at a point, someone's going to have to realise that filtering of children's data and activity online is necessary, but both sides need to meet somewhere in the middle and hold hands, because it can be done in a safe, ethical way where their privacy is protected. So we were coming out of COVID and we were getting traction. We'd applied for DTIF and we were getting places. And that helped the momentum to rise, even though at that stage I probably should have been at the end of my tether with the entire experience in kind of year 4 getting nothing, but then realised the timing was right. So I also had the luxury of having another business that my husband was running, so I could keep being paid. Now, everybody else that was on the journey with us in the team, they had full-time jobs and they were kind of working bits and pieces in their spare time. But I could keep going because we had this other successful business over here that could keep funding me. And that's not a luxury that an awful lot of startup founders have. For example, I'm sure I'm not going to dig into your personal life, but I'm sure at some point you and your wife sat down at a kitchen table and you may have said, I've got this dream. I want to, start Aldous or, the AI Awards. And there was an agreement, okay, but if we're going to take a financial hit and you're coming out of the workforce, sound familiar? Then you've got a couple of years. Yeah. But if it's not working out and the financial sacrifice of the family is becoming too much of a burden, promise you'll go back into the workforce. Yeah. That is the way most startups happen.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. So actually what happened in my story was I journal a lot and I review my journals, and I was over a 12-month period of time, I kept writing the same thing: want a new challenge, too scared to leave, too many things, golden handcuffs. And then it was the case of going, okay, I'm done. And then it was, actually, if you're really done, you need to define the problem that you're going to solve and go and figure that out. And that's where I did these 84 interviews over 6 months. And I said, is this a market? Yes, it is. And I said, okay, I've got my marketing material here. I believe it is. And that's where I spoke with the boss to say, now it's time, I'm going to do it. But I think the mindset is you have to be able to ideally have some type of platform before you jump off. Because I don't necessarily believe in that burn the ships, because the burn the ships with nothing, yes, there's a lot of survivor bias around that, but the reality of actually doing that day to day over several years, there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into that journey. And I know the people will be coming back on the line going, you have to opt in and do that, but I believe you need to have some type of platform and really try to figure out that journey to make sure people care, because there's so many wouldn't it be cool stare projects that people fall into. One of the things that I was really surprised of, and I'm kind of challenged myself why I was so surprised, because I know data is very, very difficult to get. Yeah. So everything's blown up. We all know as a parent this is a really, really big issue. But collecting the data was probably surprising or not. It was a challenge, even more challenging.
Yeah, I mean, we submitted our DTIF application in February 22. And things drastically changed between then and when we finally got the funding through, which was May 23. So things in technology move extremely quickly. And when we put the application together in February 22, there's two sides to our technology. So there's the operating system modification, which is patented. That's a method by which we access all the incoming and outgoing data in encrypted apps and other apps. But then we had to compare that content against our own AI-driven databases of harmful content. So we're building small language models, multimodal, in the specific domains of cyberbullying, grooming, and suicide and self-harm. So the opposite of that kind of random LLM system, we're building these bespoke models. And when we put the application together, we had our plan in the DTIF was that we would do a big public consultation. We would invite parents and children to submit their verbatim examples of harmful content. So if your child had been cyberbullied when they were 11, have you still got those screenshots? Give them to us so we can understand the trajectory of a conversation, the full arc. When does it start? Does it start with a non-verbal cue, for example? Was your child ghosted on their friends group? You know, they were commenting, nobody was commenting back. Were they kicked out of a friends group? You know, we wanted to understand all of these things so that we could, our aim is to detect a harmful event, harmful being cyberbullying, grooming, or an interest in suicide self-harm as early as possible. Yeah. So parents could intervene while this is still germinating. You know, it's not at full tilt where the child is being damaged or considering damaging themselves. And we did our big public consultation, and it couldn't have been more successful in terms of coverage. We were everywhere. We were on RTE News. We were in the Time. We were everywhere. And it was tumbleweed. I will not lie. And we were bemused. We were thinking, why is nobody giving us their... Like, we were getting drip feeds.
Refreshing your email.
Yeah. We were getting drip feeds. And we had built this amazing portal. And it was all about, you know, informing parents that we were scrubbing, or we were anonymizing everything. We were running a scrubbing tool. Then we were manually moderating as well to make sure we didn't save or process anything that had any personal identifiable information in it. Because we knew data would be a concern for people, because it's becoming much more part of layman's terms, data privacy, and what are you going to do with my data, how are you going to process it? So we were extremely careful that we leaned into the research side. You know, our partners are Dublin City University, specifically the Anti-Bullying Research Centre, so our ethics are absolutely top-notch. We can't do anything, or we don't do anything without first seeking research ethics committee approval at DCU, and we have our own ethics advisory board on top of that, because at the end we want to make sure that all of the child protection stakeholders can look back and know here are the steps that Chirp took to make sure that they are ethically sourcing this data and no child's identity is being compromised. So we had to rethink it then. We were thinking, how do we do this? And we got support from the GAA, we got support from the IRFU, the National Association of Principals and Deputy Principals. And they basically put our portal out to all of their network of parents. And we, over the last kind of year and a half, we've been getting a drip feed of this gold standard data, but it is agonisingly hard.
But on the flip side, that gives you confidence to know that you've got a bit of a moat, because in the world of AI now, these open source language models, everyone is getting access to incredible tech, but you've got that proprietary data set.
Very true.
With verbatim words, or you've got these words that can really kind of start to see how this can build and go through. And it's funny, you might, in days gone by, someone might say something to you, but actually it's the ghosting which is more hurtful.
Yeah, and these are all these non-verbal triggers, which is why it's important that we don't just analyse a string of sentences or one isolated conversation. So we've developed, you know, IP around analysing conversational state history, for example. So if someone says, send me a nude, you know, this is the trajectory that a grooming attempt would happen. If we detect that, we go, oh, that's not appropriate. Let's have a look back at that conversation to see if was it a new contact that was added to the phone? Is that contact common with any of the other friends groups? If not, it's more likely that this is coming from a stranger, possibly, you know, a blob in a basement somewhere that is trying to entrap your child and make them send a nude image of themselves. And once that nude image is sent, they're entrapped. It's used to sextort, coerce, blackmail for money or more images, and that is when catastrophe happens.
So kind of got off piece here a bit, but you also said something to me a couple of weeks back, was that when you were talking to a customer and you got a forward message on for an introduction, they picked up on something that wasn't necessarily a USP that you thought about, but it kind of kind of gave you a new string to your bow, in terms of actually a customer might see this as a value add rather than previously what I thought were value adds. Yeah. I don't want to give it away, but if you want to share that.
This is a major telco. So our model is we license, it's B2B, we license to high volume repeat order telcos. So we're targeting the biggest tier one telco in each market, because we anticipate they will look for some measure of exclusivity. And we had been talking about this to this massive telco in the MENA region, and I had sent them over the summary of Chirp, which included kind of the video of the demo. But I had met him in Dubai and I had done the demo for him. And he introduced me to a massive OEM. He's really trying to champion us from the inside, because he really believes it. He's got a number of kids. And so he just introduced me, and I could see the thread of the email, and I looked down, just kind of being a little bit nosy. And what he had said was the standout for him was that there was no lag that we had filtered a nude image, and in instance, and our nudity detection feature is less than 100 milliseconds, so it's not noticeable to a human. So he was flabbergasted by this, that we had done this in real time on device, applying scanning on device. So that's what really stood out for him. For me, it's, you're stopping a nude image from being sent out. So I conjure up an image of an 11-year-old girl in a room, sending a nude image. But he was thinking of the technical side, and it's his job, because his end users are children and parents. So he's thinking about the UX side. He's thinking about, what if a child gets a phone and Chirp is on it, and they're finding that their WhatsApp delivery is a little bit delayed. They're sitting beside their friend Mark. Yeah. Mark is sending a message, and it's taking me maybe a second to get. And he was thinking, that's going to be user rejection, and we don't want that, because if the user rejects Chirp, the user rejects the telco, rejects the service.
So suddenly you've got a kind of a new kind of insight that only when people start to use it and get feedback, you actually start to go. So cloud costs, what this is going to be like in the wild. And I always feel for companies and users to start to use it, but in some ways you don't want it to be too successful, because you don't even know what the costing is going to be right. And the world that we're going into now, you're trying to look 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line. You're looking at costings, you're looking at providers. How have you been trying to get your head around that for when you look to scale?
It's very difficult, and really the principal cost of goods sold for us is the compute. It's the cloud cost. And so we're heading into our Series A raise in January, so it meant that we had to put really robust figures together for financial DD for investors that are interested in putting their money in. And so the big question for us was not how much is our rent going to cost, or how many people are we going to need. We know how much they're going to cost roughly. The big unknown was the compute. So we're going on today's figures. Now, compute will get cheaper, as time goes by. But it meant an awful lot of modelling. It meant an awful lot of work from our CTO dealing with the cloud providers to try and put a really educated guesstimate together on how much it's going to cost us to support each customer. Because our ultimate goal is machine and standard parental control on all computing devices available to all children. So we don't want cost to be a barrier. So with cloud being our biggest cost, I was talking to a really amazing consultant who's helping us out. And, we were talking about emerging markets. How do we tackle emerging markets? Because if our recommended retail price is €60 per annum, and in the West, in Western Europe and North America, which is where 75% of the parental control market is, that's the average. And we wanted to keep it average. We didn't want to go up to €200, and some of them do go up to €200. We wanted to keep it average. But if you're talking about the market in Ireland, for example, ARPU could be around 20, 30 quid a month. If you think about your own bill, 20, 30 quid a month, there or thereabouts. To sustain, whatever, 5 quid a month to protect your child from cyberbullying and grooming, 80% of parents say that they would pay that. Yes. So, but what happens in emerging markets when you're talking about an average revenue per user of €2 per month? That's not sustainable for them. So we were talking about, once we get out into the West and Western Europe and North America, and we want to scale and protect as many kids as possible, and for cost not to be a barrier, there are countries out there that have their own cloud infrastructure. So we can say, okay, we'll split the price. If you're going to absorb the cost of the compute, we will just charge you, a smaller balance. So two different models. So in the West, we have high margin, low volume, but then in emerging markets, we go for high volume.
You want to try to get this right now and try to foresee these problems coming down the track, because you could be 6 months in, 12 months in a completely different position, and then you have to kind of pivot. I'm sure there's going to be pivots along the way anyway, but it's great the way your CTO has been working on this and having those conversations. And then I suppose the hyperscalers are so kind of in tune with what they're having these conversations with other people. They'll probably have good insights to work off that.
Yeah.
Where do you see this going? Your crystal ball, next 12 to 18 months, is there anything that you're kind of noticing, any trends that you're probably surprised by, or does it seem relatively straightforward what you're going to look to do in the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, with customers, we kind of are feeling, we're seeing that we're pushing an open door, and the hurdles, really, the delays that are being caused are actually by us, not by them. You know, for example, with one of our major telco partners, we want to get a proper DPIA done. And rather than do it internally, we're getting it done externally. We don't want to take any shortcuts, let's say. We want to make sure that what we put together in terms of our DPIA is a living, breathing document, and it will stand the test of pilot and then go to market.
Yeah.
And so we want to do all of the work right now so that we can make sure that we are ready to scale. And I mentioned hyperscalers. That is very much the way we are approaching our Series A raise. We want to get to market. We could go to market for a small amount of money because all of the hard work, all of the major cost is in the O&D phase, which we already have the cash for. We've got cash until the end of next year. So we will have absorbed the proof that it can be done.
Yeah.
And we don't want to lose first mover advantage. You know, when we get to market, we don't want soft launch.
Yeah.
Because ultimately we can't go to market unless we've got close and damage to a perfect product. It's not like a B2B SaaS product where you can launch a version 1 to market, let your users work out the kinks, and then by V9 you've got a perfect version. You're dealing with children's mental health. So we need to go to market with human level detection efficiency. And then once we're out in the market, that detection efficiency will improve the more users that we have, because we'll learn from those users. However, we can't go with anything substandard. We need to get out to market. So what we go to market with on day one will be most likely, you know, a product that we could go to market with 200 countries and scale rapidly.
Yeah, which I think ultimately is the best way to do it. But when you're 5-6 years in a startup and you're on that journey, and you know, I've been in the startup since 2018, you want impact, and every day you know you want that impact, and you've got that fear or worry about first mover advantage or who's out there. But obviously you're taking confidence in the people you've got surrounded in that great network, and then obviously the proprietary data set, which has taken quite a while to get, which is great. Right?
But it's also the model that we have. You know, all of our competitors are B2C model, which makes scale extremely costly and sluggish.
Yeah.
Our model is to brand by stealth. You know, so we will partner with these massive brands in each of these countries that have all of this brand equity, and we'll get the halo effect of partnering with those brands. So we won't have to raise 20 million just for marketing. That's not where our cost base is. Our cost base will remain in developing Chirp for other devices, Chirp for other smartphones. So it'll be engineering and R&D that we'll spend a lot of our money on. Chirp for other languages. You know, we start with the English language, but we very quickly scale into 15 other languages over 2 years. So because our marketing strategy and our model supports that rapid scale, it means that we're very confident of that hyper scaling strategy.
Rena Maycock, Chirp, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me very much.
Did you know that there's over 200 podcasts on the AI Ireland podcast which showcase the best and brightest of AI being applied on the island of Ireland? If you're interested to find out more about how AI is being used day to day on the island of Ireland and abroad, why don't you subscribe to this podcast, and within 15 to 20 minutes, you'll have the opportunity to reimagine how you're seeing AI being worked in business, finance, healthcare. Outside of that, I hope you subscribe and enjoy the episodes.